You probably heard about the BRICS nations ditching the dollar recently on the news, and you're intrigued. You're not sure if this is a good thing or a bad thing for your portfolio, which is probably comprised of 70% US companies. Well, the reality is, this has been happening for years now. In the last 5 years, there has been significant transition from using the US dollar for international transactions to using other currencies. As a matter of fact, by 2024, over 90% of trade between China and Russia was done in their respective national currencies, so the yuan and the ruble. At the same time, the US dollar's share of global foreign exchange reserves has declined from 71% to 59% over the recent years, indicating a gradual shift towards using other currencies. And these moves aren't to be taken lightly too. Collectively, BRICS nations account for a substantial amount of the global economy. BRICS combined GDP is worth $65 trillion, or 40% of the world's GDP, while the G7 is only 30% of GDP. Now, G7 is the international group consisting of Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States. They are considered the 7 of the world's largest advanced economies. On the other hand, BRICS is the group of 5 major emerging economies, being Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. However, recently they have expanded to Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates. At this point in time, BRICS has grown to be a sizable group, owning around 45% of the global oil reserve, and are homes to 3.6 billion people, or 45% of global population, 4 times of G7 by the way. And not to mention the massive list of big names and big nations that have applied for BRICS membership, including Algeria, Belarus, Bolivia, Cuba, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, Nigeria, Thailand, Turkey, Uganda, Uzbekistan, and Vietnam. So given BRICS' size and the application that this can have on the US, the global economy, and possibly your investments, in this video, I'll be revealing firstly the reasons why the dollar is being dished. Then I'll discuss the ways BRICS nations are dishing the dollar, since understanding this can help you see where different investments potential are. And lastly, I'll uncover the implications that this has on different investment asset classes. Firstly, let's go through the reasons behind the rise of the BRICS nations and their gradual parting away from the dollar. The first reason comes from their need to reduce dependence on the US. In the last century, the dollar dominance has given the United States way too much influence over global trade, financial systems, and sanctions. For example, the US dollar accounts for 80% of foreign global exchange reserves, 80% of global oil trade, and 70% of global corporate and government debt. Now with the last one regarding debt, this is an important one, because this means when countries borrow money for international trade, it's mostly in USD. With this, the US can keep printing money to finance their expenses because there's always constant and increasing demand to slow down the devaluation of the dollar. And even if the dollar is devalued, this just means it lowers all the debt that the US has, since they are mostly all in US dollars. At the same time, this creates dependencies on the US Federal Reserve's monetary policy. So, when the Fed raises rates, borrowing costs worldwide increase, amplifying the influence that the US has. So it's no wonder that BRICS countries find this very unfair and non-competition friendly. Now the second reason comes from sanctions avoidance. With such power coming from their own reserve currency, the US could sanction any country and impact that very country greatly. For example, in 2022, post the Ukraine invasion from Russia, the US single-handedly controlled Russia by freezing all of Russia's central bank dollar reserve held overseas. And Russian banks were banned from SWIFT, the world's biggest international payment platform, crippling their ability to engage in dollar-based trades. At that time, Russia held $630 billion in foreign reserves, of which $300 billion were frozen in dollar and euro-denominated accounts. And with this, the ruble fell by 40%. With all of this power, BRICS countries have had enough. Thus, they start to group together to start ditching the US dollar, which brings us to our second main point. How are they doing it? Now, there are quite a few ways they are approaching this, but I'll mention 4 main ones for now. The first one is that countries are reducing their own US dollar reserve and replacing it with gold. As a matter of fact, by the end of 2024, Russia and China led the world in gold reserves. So overall, BRICS countries collectively account for over 40% of global gold. With all of this, it's a very strong signal that a lot of countries are moving their reserves away from the US dollar to gold. The second approach that BRICS countries are taking includes Russia's new payment system, SBSF. Remember how I said Russian banks were banned from using SWIFT as a sanction from the US after Russia invaded Ukraine? Well, that very event triggered the birth of SBSF. SBSF is pretty much an international payment system that is an alternative to SWIFT, which is the biggest organization that facilitates international financial transactions. However, due to dollar dominance, SWIFT's governance often aligns with the US. Therefore, it was very easy for the US to exclude Russia from using SWIFT. Therefore, the birth of SBSF. It also integrates well with other payment systems such as China's CIPS or cross-border interbank payment system to facilitate non-dollar transactions. And this brings us to our third approach, China's CIPS. CIPS is designed to enable international clearing and settlement of yuan-denominated payments. And it's one of China's biggest projects so far to gain more worldwide power. In 2023 alone, CIPS processed over $12 trillion, and right now, it's increasingly being used by BRICS nations for trade. And last but not least, BRICS countries have also created their own payment system based off the collaborative effort of these countries, called DCMS. Based off Russia's SBSF and China's CIPS, DCMS system is also a digital payment platform designed to enable seamless cross-border transactions among BRICS countries using their own local currencies. However, one big difference is that it uses blockchain technology to promote transparency and processing time. It is considered the best system so far when comparing to others in terms of transaction cost, sanctions resistance, speed, and trust. So as you can see, the threat of the US dollar losing its dominance is bigger than ever. And this could signal a change in trend for different investment classes. Therefore, for this last point, I'll discuss the different investments that are well correlated with the US dollar weakening. With the BRICS countries moving away from the dollar, the first and most obvious asset class to increase in value is gold and silver. Now, as mentioned before, BRICS countries have started accumulating gold to increase their reserves to rely less on the US dollar. This is because in the past, precious metals like gold and silver have been a hedge against currency devaluation and geopolitical uncertainty. Therefore, the weakening of the dollar's dominance could boost gold prices. As a matter of fact, in the last 3 years, gold prices have gone up more than 100%, while it's only around 50% for the S&P 500. So believe it or not, this trend of countries moving away from the dollar and into commodities like gold has all been predicted by the 18.6-year real estate cycle, where commodities undergo big capital gains in the second half, which we are in right now. And as we go through the mania phase, this and next year and into the peak, we do expect good things to come. So, how do you even get involved in gold and silver? Simple. If you're an everyday investor, there are already many instruments out there for it. The first one being gold ETFs. So for example, there's the SPDR Gold Shares or GOD ticker. You can also purchase physical gold and silver or invest into mining stocks. The second asset class with great potential is emerging market opportunities. Why? BRICS nations aim to boost trade in their own local currencies, which could strengthen their economies and currencies over time. At the same time, The property cycle that I talk about so much also highlights the growth of emerging countries in the last stage of the second half, which we are in right now. Currently, we've seen emerging markets like China grew 30% in just last September in 2024, so the bulk of the gain is not even in yet. Therefore, one can get involved in this by investing in emerging market ETFs, for example, the iShare Emerging Markets ETF, EEM. Lastly, the final asset class with great prospects is crypto. The reason behind it is because a decline in dollar dominance could create interest in decentralized digital currencies as an alternative for global trade. I mean, you've already seen this in BRICS' newest payment system, DCMS, where they use the blockchain, thus creating even more popularity for the technology. So this is another thing that we have our eyes on. Similar to other asset classes, this one also falls under those that do well in the last few years of the property cycle, especially in the mania and the winner's curse phase. But they don't last long, so make sure for all the investments and all the ones that I have mentioned, you have proper risk control in place to reduce your exposure near the peak of the market. Well, there you have it. Let me know what you think of the current state of this issue with BRICS countries in the comments section. Also, I know I've mentioned the property cycle multiple times, but the thing is, if you don't truly understand the timeline of things, everything I've told you won't be of any help. So watch this video next to understand.